Dear guests, good afternoon and welcome to Ukraine House Davos. Next panel will be, it's called Enabling Recovery and Reconstruction, Investment Opportunities and Risk Insurance. And we are very grateful to Marsh McLennan for sponsorship of this panel. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you the moderator of this panel, Andy Hunter, the president of the American Chamber of Commerce, who will introduce the speakers.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm delighted to invite on stage. So we have a fantastic panel today. ROSTYSLAV SHURMA, Deputy Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. John DOYLE, CEO, Marsh McLennan. MATTEO, PATRONE, Managing Director, Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, the European Bank of Reconstruction Development, and Julie MONACO, the Global Head of the Public Sector Banking, Capital Markets and Advisory in CITIGROUP. So a very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think if there was ever a time, the best time to have a panel at Davos, it would be today, a Thursday afternoon, where after 4 days of intense meetings, intense discussions, but I think it's really a time to think, what are we going to go back with? So we are, the sign on the roof says 692 days, and we are in Ukraine. We as the American Chamber of Commerce are in Ukraine. Our members are continuing to operate. And so today we want to focus, as the panel says, on what is it we need to enable the recovery, the reconstruction, the investment opportunities, the risk insurance. So we have a fantastic panel to discuss this today. And I think we will be looking what it is, because I think the expectations we had last year, sat here this time last year, are very different to what we have today. And I think we are amending plans. And we are getting ready for the recovery conference in the URC in Berlin. And I think today we want to focus on what we've been doing over the last 12 months and what we need to do over the next 6 months tangible. And who better to kick us off than ROSTYSLAV SHURMA. ROSTYSLAV, many of you know. I think we're very grateful to ROSTYSLAV on behalf of the business community for the continued dialogue in Kyiv. ROSTYSLAV is responsible for all things in economy, on energy, and overseeing the finance, the industry and recovery initiatives. So ROSTYSLAV, I mean, kick us off. I mean, last couple of days, what have you seen and what is it that you are taking back to Kyiv from Davos?
Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. Maybe I would suggest to start just recapping back 1 year ago when we were developing the plans, recovery plans, when the mood was absolutely different. I would say the counteroffensive was very active. We regained the Kyiv, we regained region, the Kharkiv, the Kherson, and everybody was expecting that we will move on fastly and perhaps within the year we will regain the majority of the remaining territories and we will strike some deal on the security guarantees and we will speak and prepare for the very big recovery program in Ukraine. So we started designing the value chains, analyzing the fundamentals and all the segments of the economies, kind of communicating with all the corporations, financial institutions, private, just to setting up this. But now we, as a result of that and as a result of what we see on the ground, we understand that there is almost, just to be frank, zero commercial investment appetite, private investment appetite to Ukraine. So in those who see the business opportunities in multiple segments, they are not ready to commit with their own equity. Being the public companies, just being risk averse, etc. Maybe the very minor separate cases that might take place, but as a way it will not happen. What is the major thing which is holding this back is absolutely clear. This is about the uncertainty and the military risk. The risk that cannot be covered by any commercial product. There is the risk of the market as well. So these two risks that hold 90% of all the potential decisions, maybe 95%, not anything else. And the military one is absolutely predominant one. So obviously there is the unique solution for that. The solution is NATO, but it's not available. So it means that we need to switch to plan B and to offer something now, not just to discuss hypothetically that we will start some post-war recovery. We need to do and start doing something now. So conceptually, we see the three possible solutions how to mitigate this risk. The first one is about introducing the different types of the sovereign backing, sovereign guarantees for the private investments of some of the corporations or private supplies. There are some of the countries that are quite advanced in that. I can provide the examples of the Denmark, of the Germany, that have launched the very specific schemes and products, and we see already the pilot projects that already being implemented. This is the one way to do it. This is very similar to something like was Marshall Plan 70 years ago. Number two might be the different mechanisms through the IFIs, when the sovereign government is not ready to offer some kind of a tool, but they are ready to contribute and donate some of the IFIs like EBRD here, MIGA, IFC, or somebody else who will offer some kind of the product. Number three is to elaborate on the commercial product, which is not available on the market. But that will not require the 100% backing with the cash and with the deposits, because then the math doesn't work. Because any project and investment assumes that you need to have some kind of a decent leverage. And you have the 100% of the coverage for the insurance, then you have some 30 to 50% of the equity. It means that you have the negative leverage. So it doesn't work, and we need to elaborate on the commercial product. So I think this is what we'll discuss today. All those three types, maybe some other blended hybrid instruments that we need to develop and implement. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, ROSTYSLAV. So the risk, and John, the risk insurance. So can you just give us, I know you've been actively involved over the last 12 months, stuff you've been doing, and so if you can let us know what you've been doing in the last 12 months, what insurance is needed for Ukraine today, and how can it be made available quickly?
Yeah, thanks, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you. And I can't think of something more important or more connected to the purpose of our organization than to be doing this work. So so we're proud to be trying to be part of the solution here. So insurance is going to be the backbone of many economies, and ultimately will enable the attraction of capital and investment into any market around the world. And so it's at its highest level. That's really what our objectives are. Of late, our focus had been the grain market and getting shipping insurance in place so that grain can flow through the Black Sea. And so our team, some of our colleagues are in the room here, worked tirelessly with the government, had legislation passed, and developed a public-private partnership model with private capital up on top, taking risk on top. But we now have a functioning insurance market for shipping through the Black Sea. That can be a model for us to focus on other aspects of the insurance market. Broadly speaking, we need a highly functioning market, really across all aspects of the economy. So our focus will turn to other commodities, other areas of insurance. And to do that, one of the things we worked with the NSDC on was putting a war risk data platform together. The government has an incredible amount of data, digitized form, and so we worked with the government to put that data together in a way that we think we can use to help attract insurance capital and ultimately investment capital to the market. So, looking forward, that's our where we're focused, Andy, and near term, we know travel and enabling travel into the country is a critical thing. Part of that is just how the warning label that the West has put on travel into Ukraine, and we know from the data that the entire country is not a risky place to visit. And so, I think there's some work, we know there's some work we can do and some progress we can make on that, and ultimately restoring even air travel to the country will have a really important economic impact. So that's our area of focus at the moment.
Okay, brilliant. Matteo, EBRD, one of the biggest investors in Ukraine today. Again, what have you been doing over the last year, and what are you looking at for the next 6 months?
So let me take one step back with respect to last year. So when the conflict started, we pledged to invest 3 billion euros in the country over the 2 years, 2022, 2023. Actually, we ended up investing 3.8 billion euros, out of which 2.1 billion euros in 2023. And out of this, half went to the public sector, to state-owned enterprises, and half of it went to the private sector. in the form of, indeed, loans and some equity, very marginal, but otherwise loans, or we took some risk away from the balance sheet of banks so that they could on-lend to the SME sector. And we focused on 5 areas, and those are indeed energy security. So we supported the likes of Ukrenergo over 2022 and 2023, Naftogaz, and in the vital infrastructure sector, so in transport, we supported ROSTYSLAV and the Agency for Restoration, and a number of municipalities. In the food sector, entirely in the private sector, we supported a number of companies, again, both directly through loans or through the banking system when it comes to supporting SMEs. Private sector in general, both local companies and foreign direct investors like ArcelorMittal or local companies of any size, really. And another big chunk of our business was on facilitating trade. And that is absolutely crucial in the current environment. So all that sums up to 2.1 billion euros. We could not have done that without the support of our shareholders that have taken away part of the risk that we took on our books. At the end of last year, our shareholders also decided to increase the capital of the BRD by 4 billion euros. That will have a leverage effect on our ability to provide finance in the real economy of the country. And so we will not require guarantees for our investors anymore, apart from some very specific exception, some products that would not be able to deploy in any country, not in Ukraine only, without some level of protection. And the plan is to continue more of the same at the moment being. So those 5 areas that I mentioned are indeed the ones where we're going to focus also in 2024. But we stand ready to change that strategy depending on how the situation evolves, because ROSTYSLAV is absolutely right. The volatility requires flexibility in the approach. And this is exactly what we have applied in our approach in the last couple of years. And that is why we managed to put so much finance at work.
Brilliant. Julie, I remember this time 2 years ago, in 2022, we had our contingency plans in place. We were getting ready for we didn't know what's going to happen, but we bought paper maps. We took out paper money because we were being told, the internet's not going to work. I think today the internet works better in wartime Kyiv than it does in many European cities. The banking sector continues to work seamlessly. So thank you to you, thank you to Citi for sort of continuing that. What have you been doing over the last 12 years, especially on enabling recovery and reconstruction?
So the focus has been the same since the beginning of the war. We at Citi have operated as a local bank for close to 30 years on the ground in Ukraine. We have 500 clients. Those clients represent local corporations, state-owned enterprises, and foreign multinationals who are operating in the country. Our number one goal when this war started was to take care of our employees, which we've done, and also make sure that those companies could still operate. And out of those 500 companies, only 2 of them are not operational today. So what have we seen and what have we focused on? We focused on helping them not only operate, but helping them continue to grow, because there are segments that are continuing to grow. And what we're really, the resilience of these businesses in terms of finding alternative fuel sources, alternate routes in terms of how they're getting their products out. We're helping with them with that resiliency and continuing to support them financially, right? We have loans out to these companies. A lot of them are performing fine, and we see ourselves as a really important part of helping Ukraine continue to grow its GDP. What we see, though, is that where our focus has been with them is how do we make sure that they have the working capital that they need in order to continue to grow their businesses, and a lot of them are continuing. And some parts of the segments, the technology segment specifically, has grown dramatically. Also, what we're looking at is how do we figure out ways that they can do more investments. And so that's the area that, was discussed that's more difficult in terms of doing further, longer-term reconstruction, building type of investment. We've leveraged some of the guarantees that the governments have been providing. We did a rebuild on a bridge, and it was UK Exim banking. But we're also looking for creative ideas to work with the DFIs on how we can deploy more money locally on other projects besides working capital. And so we worked very hard this year, my team did, to develop a capability to start lending our local currency, because we have a lot of excess local currency because of the capital restrictions right now, and we have government clients whose revenue is growing and their deposits are growing, and looking at ways that we could actually on-lend that to the DFIs and work together to find the right projects. And what we're going to be focusing on in 2024 is how do we all work together across multiple DFIs, across multiple donor countries, to get larger projects done that we know need to be done immediately. And then another area of focus has been part of the economy that's performing really well is the middle economy. So we opened up a commercial bank right before this war started. And just this year, we onboarded 80 new clients who are all performing very well. And we are actually in negotiations with our own government back in the United States for financial support for those companies to help them grow. So we're continuing. We have to do both in parallel. We have to just keep moving with our existing clients and our new clients that we're bringing on board and help the current economy. But at the same time, we got to come up with solutions because the war has lasted longer than anybody expected, and we have to continue to operate in this war environment, and we have to be different about how we're doing that versus waiting for reconstruction after the war's over.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Well, I think in terms of the resilience we've seen on the battlefields is truly phenomenal. But I think also some of the companies that Julie mentions, the resilience of the private sector has been absolutely fantastic also, showing what has Ukraine been doing over the last 2 years to keep the economy ticking over. And I do want to mention sort of the private sector, what it's been doing, even this place where we are today. This is the private sector that's brought this together. So thank you, Elena. Thank you to all the sponsors that made this possible. That here on this promenade in Davos are giving the opportunity to get the message across to show that Ukraine is open for business. One tagline that we've been pushing, saying it's risky to invest in Ukraine, but it's more risky not to invest in Ukraine. So I think something along these lines. But ROSTYSLAV, last 4 days, you've had many meetings, and I know you've got meetings to go to right after this also. What are the investors saying to you, and what are they asking you for?
To be frank, the key question is about geopolitics and war. There is no specific discussions on the projects, as I mentioned, the first part of the discussion. And this is absolutely obvious because there is no clarity what will be and when will be the final solution. But what is really important, after the Middle East conflict started and many other developments accelerate in the world like AI, it's very important to keep the Ukraine in focus. And I think everybody understood that we are losing a little bit of this focus and momentum during the last half a year. And I think the Davos was very good of bringing back the attention to Ukraine. And if before the Davos, when we saw the agenda, we spoke with the people, we understood that Ukraine is somewhere on the teens, 20s topics of the Davos in reality. But as a result of the visit of the president, of his speeches, of his meetings, of the reaction, of how he was received, I can confidently say that we definitely were in top 5, maybe top 3 topics of Davos this year, together with the AI, together with energy transition, and definitely we overtook the Middle East situation in Davos this way. So the main purpose was to bring back the importance of the war in Ukraine. We managed to do that, to discuss some of the questions that were not decided before. I think we've received a couple of very important political decisions, that we've got the commitments, and we've got a couple of very interesting commercial and financial feedbacks and next steps as a result of the visit of the president. But besides that, I want to refer of one of the important items that John mentioned, is about the air connection. The logistics and connectivity, and specifically air connectivity, is the fundamentally important element for any business and investment activity. Without that, anything doesn't work. If the investors and the business people cannot come in comfortably to the location and quickly, they will not come and they will not do anything. So I don't want to create over expectations like it was with the counteroffensive, but I can tell you that we are working very intensively to recover the air connection in Ukraine. There are three dimensions for this project. One is technical, to ensure the physical security, and our team and the military team is closely working with Israeli colleagues to learn their example, and we're absolutely sure that we will manage this. The second is regulatory, because we need to get the approvals of IATA and FAA, which is not an easy case, and it definitely does not depend on us, it more depends on the bold decisions of the international partners that we believe they will get. And number three, again, it's about the risks, about the insurance policies. Because we can open the airport, we can get the approvals, but none of the air company, none of the lessors will allow their fleet to fly in because of the risks. And here we'll get the same challenge to establish the proper risk instruments so that the air companies can fly into Kyiv that we plan to open.
And I would add, this is where the data platform can be very useful to begin a conversation. As I mentioned before, the Unity facility, the grain facility that's allowing grain to ship through the Black Sea now, is a blueprint, I think, that we can use where we can work with the government maybe to set up a first loss layer and then attract private capital to come in up above that. Another area is just around the rule of law and contract certainty too for foreign investors. And we work that out as part of the Unity facility, but that'll be an important consideration as well.
Okay, but just, we're talking about Boryspil, or we're talking about Lviv and Boryspil?
We are looking at two options at the moment. There are pluses and minuses for every of them, but our primary focus is Boryspil.
Okay, and summertime? Summer?
Look, we have our internal roadmap and schedule. You are right, but I don't want to tell any specific timelines because, look, if it depended only on us, I would maybe be ready to commit publicly. But I think that the share of our homework is not more than 20% here. That's why to do any commitments on the decisions of the international partners, independent regulators, insurance industry, I cannot do this.
Yeah.
But we will definitely do our best to implement it.
Well, fantastic. I think this is just the point that Lord Cameron touched on at the breakfast this morning about making it easier for citizens, in his case, citizens of the UK. I think there's something also we are discussing in terms of regional, because at the moment there's a blanket no travel policy. I think it's working with the State Department, working with other governments, making it easier for citizens of different countries to travel, because I think that's so important for the business community and looking at sort of future. So Matteo, in terms of the 5 areas you've been looking at, anything specific sort of you want to focus on the stuff that especially for the next 6 months, what you'll be looking for in terms of?
Yeah, I like maybe to mention one thing that Julia alluded to is, and I think Neil Ferguson alluded to that quite clearly yesterday at the dinner, also by the Pinchuk Foundation, is the reconstruction happens now. There is no discontinuity point between the conflict and the reconstruction. A number of things need to be rebuilt now, both in the private sector and in the public sector. That's why we extended a 300 million euro line, to which the Dutch government added another 72 million euro of grant to Ukrenergo at the end of last year for emergency reconstruction. And because at that point that was needed. And one of the projects that we are working on and that hopefully we're going to close fairly soon in partnership with the Italian government is with Ukrenergo for that project is a package of 200 million euros, 50 million are liquidity because the company needs also to finance its profit and loss and the current expenditures, but 150 million euros are to rebuild 2 stations north of Nova Kakhovka. And we have a number of other projects of that sort that we are looking at in the road sector, for instance, where 2019, we extended a facility of 450 million euros to the then Kraftador. Most of those projects are not either viable or not priority anymore. So we are gradually reconverting those projects to something that is more useful at the moment being and more priority. For instance, last year, we reconverted about 200 million euros to the revamping of the Lviv-Ravaruska road. And we are considering with Minister Kubrakov and his team to do something similar this year.
Okay, well, brilliant. Julie, in terms of City, again, you know, any specific sectors that you're seeing more interest coming through at the moment?
Certainly, we're seeing there's defense, there's infrastructure, there's technology, and agriculture, right? All of them have investment needs. And we're looking at all those industries very closely. And what we're really focused on, again, is how to work on solutions this year that can improve the business environment, can improve the tools that we can work on together. And for us, it comes down to three things that we think are really important for us to get to that next level this year while the war is still going on. One is what John mentioned. I think that, you know, the business, I listed all the things about what's great about the business environment, and Ukraine is open for business, and it's going well for so many of our companies that we're supporting. To increase the business confidence, I think that accepting adjudication from EU and UK courts on business law would be important for outside investment that we're trying to attract in on the FDI side. So that's something that we can work on. On the IFI side, we would like to see them revisit some of their products and solutions and make them more keen to wartime. What we're saying is, you know, we need more war insurance. We have certain sectors and clients where we don't have concerns about the credit risk. What we have concerns about is, you know, war and destruction of war. So if we could get some of those tools. Now, I think the other thing, too, is scale. And that's going to require both from the donor governments and the IFIs, do we have and I know there's discussions about a G7 multi-donor platform, but we're going to need a way to pool together our capabilities in order to get larger projects done. Because right now you couldn't get a $100 million project insured. So everything that's happening is small. And I think that if we put our minds together and really focus on some of these problems, we could get some of these projects done this year while the war is still happening. So that's what we're planning on spending a lot of our time. I have a team that's completely focused on development finance, has relationships with all the DFIs and all the donor governments. And we're going to try to use those resources to pull some of this together and continue to work with the Ukraine government. Hopefully we can get more done in 24.
Okay. On the G7 multi-donor platform, I don't know, Matteo, do you want to add anything on that?
Well, there are different levels of coordination. The G7 multi-donor coordination platform indicates the strategic guidance to a number of stakeholders in Ukraine on where we want to go in terms of reform agenda, in terms of pluriannual investments, etc. But there are also other platforms which are probably more concrete in terms of actions. The IFI coordination platform is one of them, and there is a rotating chair among us. And we took the view, indeed, that we need to focus on specific issues that would help us accelerating both the investment process, but also the implementation of investments. For instance, one of those issues is related to public procurement practices for the various IFIs. And we finally got together and we signed a memorandum of intent among all major IFIs, the World Bank Group, us, the EIB, and the Council of Eurobank, on harmonizing the public procurement processes using Prosoro and using the BRD platform. That will help in terms of implementation. And another area where we are closely coordinating is in institutional capacity building in some of the agencies. We mentioned the Agency for Restoration. That is one of the things that we are doing as a BRD, which complements what we are doing in terms of reform policy. You know that we've been putting in place the Ukrainian reform architecture since 2016. This is the deployment, basically, some of them are here in the room, of 200 young professionals in a number of ministries and agencies to underpin the reform agenda of the government. In this case, they are pivoted their action towards helping the EU accession talks. So there are a number of things that are happening in the IFI world. Then there is another coordination platform that I think works very well, and is the one managed and chaired by State Secretary Payet on energy. That is very helpful and very much needed, exactly because of the urgency in terms of energy security. And there is the finance track, which looks after the budget needs of the country, and indeed the G7 multi-donor coordination platform that brings all of these together. There is a learning process for all of us, and that is the case also for the platform itself.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for that, Matteo. So in terms of the recovery, the reconstruction, ROSTYSLAV, so I think we are sort of looking forward-looking. I think there's a lot of unpredictability. We have 40 countries going into elections, 3 billion people taking part in elections. I think it's going to be a year. I mean, my many years in the sort of Davos, I think this one's got a lot of fog and a lot of unpredictability. So we have to eat this elephant in parts. So if we look at the next, we're getting ready for, Matteo sort of touched on the reforms, the reform conference in Berlin in June. What is it? What is the government going to do over the next 6 months to get ready for reforms in Berlin, ready for enabling the reconstruction?
Obviously, there is the very wide list of the reforms that has been agreed with the IMF, with the European Union within the specific facilities. So we will be very dedicated to implement them, and we are quite on track on doing and implementing the commitments that we took before. Moreover, we will do a lot of other things on improving the business climate in Ukraine, and we have a very simple KPI that what is our competitive advantage in Europe, besides the people? That starting the business, but not legally, but physically, to get to the ready-to-shovel phase should be the fastest possible in Europe. So that only the engineering documentation should be the bottleneck, but not the approvals, not the communication with the authorities. And we are quite on track to do a couple of major changes in the land designation, in the utilities, in the grids, in the environmental approvals, in the local authorities approvals. So that's what we're going to do and what we're going to implement. But once again, what is really bad, that very often this reforms agenda is being pushed ahead. Not the business environment is the main obstacle of doing business in Ukraine. The military risk and the permanent access to the market. This is 90% of the issue. Obviously, we have a lot of regulatory problems. We have some problems with the rule of law, as any other countries. We need to fix them. But just doing these reforms, just fixing that, everybody should have in mind, nothing will change until we fix the military situation and we ensure the long-term access to the market, which are absolutely crucial two things. Maybe before handing over, I wanted to refer to one more instrument that we are working actively on. It's a bit delayed, again delayed because of the war situation. This is Ukrainian Development Fund that we started to work on a bit more a year ago, together with the BlackRock and JP Morgan. We expected to launch it, and our expectation was second half of the last year, based on our military expectations. But due to the obvious reason, we have delayed it because some sources of the capital that we relied on is simply not available in the current situation. So now we are basically, our realistic timeline is something like the mid of the year, perhaps the Germany recovery conference. At the moment, I can inform that we have something like $500 million of soft committed catalytic capital. We will work on this number to increase it further. The target is 1 billion, but I don't know, maybe it will be 0.5 as it is. And this is one more tool that will allow to implement the business projects, at least in limited amount in this wartime situation. Blended with the private capital, I believe it should be of a couple of billion of extra source of investment liquidity injection to the country.
So out of all the sectors, I think one is the defense sector. There's been a lot of discussions about this. Raising capital for this sector is quite unique. Anything you can share what you've been discussing over the last couple of days on this?
Frankly speaking, there were no specific discussions on the military tech and defense over the last days, because Davos is not the place where those types of the deals are being done, to be frank. This is a bit different, I would say, story on funding, on transfer technology. There were separate meetings, separate conferences run by the Ukrainian government, by the Ministry of Defense and Ministries of Strategic Industries and our companies. What we see the fundamental change. We have a lot of local startups. It turned out that we have plenty of competitive products. I think up to a dozen of products where we are in top 3 globally. Drones is obvious, it's anti-tank systems Stugna, because everybody spoke about the Javelin at the beginning of the war. But if you compare Stugna with Javelin, it's much, much better in terms of all the technical parameters, in terms of the convenience, how to use it, and in terms of the price, and in terms of our capacity to produce now. It's a dozen times bigger than the Javelin's capacity. Air engines that Motor Siege produces for the missiles, for the military planes, it turned out that only three countries in the world can compete and are in the segment, and the Israelis and all the Middle East and Southeast Asia, they don't have the alternatives, because this is the critical position. And in those couple of positions, we are very, very competitive, and I think we can get the long-term order book for decades ahead, which will be a very good source for the Ukrainian economy. In terms of the funding of those sectors, this is quite a different source of capital. You can hardly find it in the typical capital markets. It's quite a niche source, and we are working on that.
Okay. So, John, what needs to happen for Marsh McLennan to do more in Ukraine?
Well, we're all in, and as I said earlier, the near-term focus is supporting during war times the resilience of the economy as best we can, and so the near-term focus is moving past that Unity facility, using that as a blueprint to support other aspects of the economy, and as we discussed, travel is an important part of it. So that's going to be a big part of our focus over the coming months, but it also includes using that data. And having some level of contract certainty, some confidence in contract law in the country to attract insurance capital. Insurance investors, the investors that sit behind insurance companies, are no different than other investors, right? They're quite concerned, whether it's an aircraft lessor or any other type of investor. They're very worried about the war risk, understandably so. How can we create facilities that give them a level of confidence, maybe that takes more risk than they ordinarily would, to support the economy, because they're willing to have the conversation. They want to be supportive.
Okay. And Matteo, for you, EBRD, big part of the URCs. What would you like to see happen over the next 6 months before URC?
I'd like to come to URC with a concrete plan for how we can support the Ukrainian real sector, real economy in the next 12 to 18 months.
Who should draw up that plan?
Well, we should come together to draw that plan. I don't believe in dirigism. I don't believe in top-down approaches. I think this is a dialogue that needs to happen between all stakeholders interested in Ukraine: IFIs, commercial banks, insurance companies, the government, and obviously strategic investors, both local and foreign investors. But one thing on foreign investors, if I may, until now there's been a lot of talks of how to attract new foreign investors in the country. There are a number of foreign direct investments already present in the country. Those are companies that are not leaving the country. Many of them are actually doubling down with investments. One of them is our client, is Nestle, for instance, to which we have lent money in mid-2023. Less leverage on our friends, because they are already there and they believe in the country. They know it and they believe in the investment climate in the country.
Yes, maybe I'd like to adapt a little bit on the specific deliverables for the recovery conference. I think one of the key KPIs basically that we have in place specific products that we have named. For example, if you speak about the direct government backing, so at least that we have 20, 30 countries with the specific instruments, how they back the investments of their corporations. For example, like the Germany, Denmark has, so we need 20 more that have in place, or the export credit agencies, or through some national funds, or directly from the budget, because everybody has his national specifics, but the scheme should be developed and approved. The second one is that on the level of IFIs, we need to have to standardize and implement this product for the countries that will not deploy the national product, but will contribute through the IFIs to do this. And number three, I think this is the task for us as the government, to, together with the commercial insurance industry, to commercialize this war risk insurance product. And it's now obviously number four, this Ukrainian Development Fund, which is as well one of the sub-products that resolves this issue, to have this introduced, implemented, and launched.
Okay, but just going back to Matteo's point about this plan, ROSTYSLAV, what's your view? How should this be coordinated? Who should be coordinating this? What role the government should be? What role the private sector, the IFIs?
Look, this is the Ukrainian Recovery Conference, so obviously the central role and central lead should be by the Ukrainian government, and it's just the matter of the intensive engagement of the IFIs, the partners, and the private sector.
Okay.
This is the government's responsibility to do that.
Okay, and the role of the private sector in this? I mean, what role? Because we have a lot of expertise of the companies on the ground.
Look, we believe that 90% of everything that should be going on is about the private sector. So in terms of the investments, in terms of the solutions, proposals, decisions. So obviously to work closely with the government, proposing different ideas, mechanisms, and ways to resolving different issues.
Okay, good. Julie.
I was just going to say that we would love to be directly involved in how we're pulling together all of these direct government backings and the IFIs. So I think that would be something that would be really, if we could get that conversation going soon, we would put resources to helping, because we know what's needed by our companies, and we know what's needed by the commercial banks that are operating on the ground now. And I think if we make this a three-way dialogue, we can actually help, because we're talking to all those IFIs and all those donor governments as well. But you have the convening power to pull it all together, but we could be at the table to help say, this is how it has to be standardized, this is how it has to work, and then it's going to unlock this. And that's something that we are committed to putting as many resources as needed towards that.
Yeah, I think from our side, the message from our members, and you mentioned Nestle, the 40 million investment that's happening during the war. 49% of our members have had damage or destruction to their facilities, especially the first days of the war, like companies like Unilever when they're through Hostomel and others. But these companies like Coca-Cola, the plants in Brovary, just north of Kyiv, it was under occupation. It's the largest in terms of volume producing Coca-Cola in Europe. So these companies are up and running during the war, and I think that's the message we are delivering, that Ukraine is open for business. McDonald's, they continue to operate, and they're opening new restaurants as they go along. So I think it's the realities of what's going on. But just going back to Julie's point, I think from our side, there's the expertise that the experience from companies, and anything we can do to help. We are more than happy to assist with that. We work closely with Matteo. Matteo's on our board, and Citi and on our board also. So anything we can do to help, we are here. I know ROSTYSLAV has a meeting to go to. I don't know if there's any questions in the audience. Anyone would like to ask anything? Is that a question? Sorry. Okay, we can use this one maybe. Sorry, that's. Я перекладу, якщо треба. Окей.
Доброго дня, мене звати Олександр Вознюк. Я очолюю правозахисну спілку людей з інвалідністю в Україні. Наша організація займається збиранням військових злочинів проти Росії, України і українців, де Росія агресор вчиняє такі злочини. Так, в мене до вас є питання. Також я обраний від громадянського сектору в Європейський Союз по просуванню євроінтеграції на 3 роки від громадянського сектору по євроінтеграційним цінностям в Європу. У мене до вас питання. Ви дуже багато говорите про бізнес, про заведення капіталу, це дуже важливо. Але тут важливий момент. Чи бачить бізнес розвиток громадянського суспільства? Чи що головне, це бізнес-інструмент чи громадянське суспільство? І чому? І чи вважаєте ви, впливає громадянське суспільство формування нової візії інтеграції, євроінтеграції до вступу ЄСу і в допомозі українському уряду? Щиро дякую.
Дякую.
Це питання до вас всіх спікерів.
So, in a nutshell, the question is about how does business see the role of civil society?
Я сказав це українською мовою, тому що багато людей з інвалідністю не спілкуються англійською.
Yes, I think, you know, if I'll try and answer. I think we have, especially when it comes to issues like fighting corruption, we have the 3 Ps: prevent, publicize, and punish. And I think the prevention, there's all kinds of mechanisms that have been introduced, but the publicizing, I think it's really working together with the civil society, and then the punishing. So I think, you know, we do strongly believe in the role of civil society, and we, as the American Chamber of Commerce, we are open, working with civil society. So anything we can do together, please do. I don't know if there's anything to add.
Yep.
No? Okay. So good. If there's no more questions, I think we can just final wrap up. So final wrap up. I mean, Rostislav, we're leaving Davos tomorrow. What are you leaving Davos 2024 with?
Today, I'm leaving with the feeling that at least we brought back the Ukraine to the agenda. We are leaving with the confidence of the political and financial support of our key partners, the European Union and the United States. You don't have the 100% guarantee that the packages will be voted, but we are pretty confident that they will be. It means that the 2024 is being secured. We are leaving with the understanding that the key business and financial leaders globally understand that Ukraine is not something, the war, somewhere conflict on the outskirts, that this is the focal point, that in case the democracy will not win, Ukraine will not win, the whole world order, their business model might collapse. They have the very clear understanding, and their positions and are much more bold even than the positions of politicians that we hear. I think these 3 messages.
Okay. John, Davos 2024, Ukraine. What have you seen in Davos about Ukraine?
I think you should be exceedingly proud of your presence here at the forum. I happen to be staying across the street. There was a crowd around this house, you know, every single day, and so you should be very, very proud of that. We continue to be inspired by the resilience and hope of Ukrainian people, and so we're going to continue to commit ourselves. Democracy is at stake. The United States recognizes that. Europe recognizes that. Of course, there's always domestic politics, but this conference helped bring it back up the list, and so thank you.
Matteo?
Well, I'm not surprised by the success of the Ukrainian delegation here, because I know our partners in the country, and I know the country, and Ukraine is an existential file for the BRD. We keep saying that the BRD is one of the major investors in Ukraine, but it's quite the opposite is true. Ukraine is one of the major markets for the BRD, and without Ukraine, the BRD would not exist. So I'm not surprised at all about this success. I'm actually very pleased that the narrative around Ukraine has changed, and is changing this week, and it's quite obvious that that is the case, because the Ukrainian armed forces have stopped the invasion, because the Ukrainian economy is proven to be extremely resilient. We have not mentioned numbers today, but yes, we had a drop of GDP because of the invasion last year, very significant, but in 2023 the economy grew at about 5% and above expectations, and in 2024 there is an expectation of further growth. And because the reforms are happening, and they've been happening since 2014, not with a linear trajectory, but they've been happening, and that's why we ended up, for instance, with a banking sector which has proven to be extremely resilient and absolutely crucial for the response to the economic shock of the war. And they keep happening now. And so in the current circumstances, Ukraine is a story of major success.
Julie.
Last night I was at a dinner for the future of Europe where all the European prime ministers were around the tables, and they all got up and spoke specifically about Ukraine in the context of the future of Europe. So I walk away after that dinner last night seeing the resolve around the room, how important this is, not just for Europe, but for the world. And I think that, you know, I certainly congratulate the Ukraine government, what you've done in Ukraine House, because it did increase the profile this week in terms of there has been distractions with other wars and other conflicts going on, but I think that this put it right back, and I walk away with confidence that there is resolve to make sure that Ukraine wins militarily and that we continue to support Ukraine economically. Second is that from being here a few times now this week and talking with my colleagues, we accomplished more than maybe even some people expected to be accomplished economically, the 5% growth last year. But I walk away with optimism that we can do more now, you know, to really help that GDP number be even higher and make Ukraine even better. And I think that when we solve some of the, like you said, when the war risk goes away, I have no doubt that the foreign investors will all be there.
Yeah. Well, I think on that note, just want to say, you know, we are back in Kyiv, Monday morning back at the office. So we look forward to seeing you in Kyiv. Anything we can do to help you, to help your business in Ukraine. Starting today, you see these organizations are already working in Ukraine today. We are there. We are supporting the business. We are very grateful to the government for all the support, for the continued dialogue. So, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please, for our great panel. Julie Monaco, Matteo Patrone, John Doyle, and ROSTYSLAV SHURMA. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. I would like to say thank you for the sponsorship to Marsh McLennan. Thank you very much. And to all the speakers. Invest now, as the President Zelensky said at WEF, invest now and help us to win quickly. So, and stay warm with the Ukrainian designers. This is for Odile as well? Yes, thank you. Thank you. What's here? Yeah. Do you have one? Yeah? Okay, this is for you. Okay. Next panel will start at 5 p.m. This will be the final panel, followed by the networking reception. Please join us.